The detention facility's cafeteria always smelled like disinfectant and despair. But today something else hung in the recycled air, the aroma of my grandmother's turkey sandwich. I'd packed it this morning with extra care, adding the pickles and mustard exactly how she used to make them. It was my small comfort in this place where hope came to die. My name is Jace, and I've been working the food service rotation at the Meridian Detention Center for almost 2 years now. It wasn't glamorous work, sliding nutrient trays through reinforced slots, but it paid the bills and kept me fed. Most days blurred together in a haze of routine and resignation. Today it was different. I was wheeling my cart through the high-security wing when I saw her. The alien prisoner in cell block 7 had been here for 3 weeks, but something about her always made me pause. She wasn't like the others. There was a grace in how she moved, even in the cramped confines of her cell. Her skin had a soft blue-silver sheen that caught the harsh fluorescent lights, and her eyes were the color of deep ocean storms. But today, those beautiful eyes were hollow with hunger. I'd noticed she barely touched the standard nutrient paste we served. Most alien species couldn't stomach human prison food anyway, but watching her waste away bothered me more than it should have. She sat on her narrow cot, arms wrapped around her knees, looking fragile despite her tall frame. "Move along, food boy," growled guard Torvin, his meaty hand slapping against his shock baton. "These freaks don't deserve your pity." I wanted to tell him exactly what I thought of his attitude, but jobs were scarce and I needed this one. Instead, I nodded and continued my rounds, but I couldn't stop thinking about the alien woman's sunken cheeks and the way her elegant fingers trembled slightly. Her name was Nira. I'd heard the guards use it when they thought no one was listening. She never caused trouble, never complained, just sat quietly in her cell like she was waiting for something or someone. During my lunch break, I unwrapped my sandwich and stared at it. Grandmother's recipe always reminded me of better times, when the world seemed less gray and possibilities felt endless. But today, all I could think about was a blue-silver woman with storm-colored eyes who hadn't had a real meal in weeks. The decision came suddenly, like lightning. I rewrapped the sandwich and tucked it inside my jacket. The afternoon shift was quieter. Most guards were in the break room, watching the planetary news feeds, leaving the cell blocks barely supervised. I made my way back to Block 7, my heart hammering against my ribs. Nira was sitting in the same position, but her head turned when she heard my footsteps, up close. I could see the fine bone structure of her face, the way her dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders. She was beautiful, in a way that made my chest tight. "You're not supposed to be here," she said, her voice soft and melodic despite the exhaustion. Her accent was subtle, adding a musical quality to her words. "I know," I whispered, glancing around nervously, "but I brought you something." I pulled out the sandwich and held it through the bars. Her eyes widened, focusing on the simple offering like it was made of gold. "I cannot accept this," she said, but her voice wavered. "You could lose your position. You're starving." I replied simply, "I've seen how you look at the nutrient paste. This is real food. My grandmother's recipe." Nira stood slowly, her movements careful and precise. She approached the bars, and I caught a faint scent like rain on summer flowers. Our fingers brushed as she took the sandwich, and I felt an electric current run up my arm. "Why?" she asked, her storm-colored eyes searching my face. "Why would you risk this for me?" I didn't have a good answer. Looking at her, seeing the genuine surprise and gratitude in her expression, I realized I'd never done anything quite so impulsive in my life. But somehow, it felt right. "Because everyone deserves kindness," I said finally, "especially when they're far from home." She unwrapped the sandwich with reverent care, as if it were a precious artifact. When she took her first bite, her eyes closed and a soft sound of pleasure escaped her lips. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. She paused, taking another small bite. "This is wonderful. What is it called?" "Turkey sandwich," I said, smiling despite the nervous energy coursing through me. "My grandmother used to make them for me when I was little." "Turkey," she repeated, testing the word. "And this green thing, pickles, they're pickled cucumbers." She laughed, a sound like silver bells, and suddenly the cold detention center felt warmer. Your grandmother must have been a very wise woman. She was, I said, surprised by how easily I was talking to her. She always said food was love made edible. Nira paused mid-bite, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Love made edible, she murmured. That is beautiful. We stood there in comfortable silence while she ate, neither of us acknowledging how dangerous this moment was. When she finished, she carefully folded the wrapper and handed it back to me. Thank you, Jace, she said, and hearing my name in her musical voice made my pulse quicken. I will not forget this kindness. How did your name tag? She said with a small smile that transformed her entire face. I have been watching you. You are different from the others. Before I could respond, heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. I quickly pocketed the wrapper and grabbed my cart. Trying to look busy, guard Torvin rounded the corner, his suspicious eyes scanning the area. What are you doing here, food boy? He demanded. Just finishing the meal distribution, I replied, keeping my voice steady. He looked at Nira, then back at me, his expression hostile. Well, finish faster. These cells aren't a social club. As I wheeled my cart away, I caught Nira's eyes one last time. She mouthed thank you and placed her hand over her heart, in what seemed like a gesture of deep respect. Walking back to the cafeteria, I realized something had fundamentally changed. That simple act of sharing my sandwich had created a connection I'd never expected. Nira wasn't just another prisoner anymore. She was a woman with a musical laugh and storm-colored eyes who made my grandmother's sandwich taste like love. I was already planning what to bring her tomorrow. The next few days fell into a dangerous rhythm. Every afternoon during the quiet shift, I found myself drawn back to cell block 7 with some small offering. A piece of fruit from my lunch, a cookie from the vending machine, sometimes just a cup of real coffee instead of the synthetic stuff they served prisoners. Nira began waiting for me by the bars, and our conversations grew longer despite the risk. I learned she was from a planet called Valanus, where the trees grew silver leaves, and the oceans reflected 3 moons. She told me about her family's garden, where they grew fruits that tasted like starlight and flowers that sang in the wind. It sounds like paradise, I said one afternoon, passing her a fresh apple through the bars. It was, she replied, her voice carrying a note of sadness. Before the accusations, before I was brought here, she never elaborated on what those accusations were, and I didn't push. Whatever she'd supposedly done, it was hard to believe this gentle woman was capable of real crime. What about you, Jace? She asked, taking a delicate bite of the apple. Tell me about your world. I found myself sharing stories I'd never told anyone about growing up in the industrial district, about my grandmother who raised me after my parents died in a transport accident, about the small apartment where I still kept her recipe books and faded photographs. You carry much sadness, Nira observed one day, reaching through the bars to briefly touch my hand. Her skin was warm and incredibly soft, but also much kindness. They are often connected, I think. Her cellmate, a surly Crotonian named Kessa, usually ignored our conversations, but I noticed her watching us with calculating eyes. Kessa had been in the detention center longer than anyone, convicted of smuggling charges that everyone knew were probably true. You're playing with fire. Human, she finally spoke up one day, her gravelly voice cutting through our conversation. Guards like Torvin, they notice everything eventually. Mind your own business, Kessa, Nira said sharply, the first time I'd heard her speak with real authority. Your business becomes my business when they start asking questions about why my cellmate suddenly has energy to pace the floor all night instead of lying there like a corpse. Kessa retorted, but there was something almost protective in her tone. That night, I lay awake thinking about Kessa's warning. The smart thing would be to stop these visits, to go back to my normal routine, and forget about storm-colored eyes and musical laughter. But when I imagined not seeing Nira tomorrow, my chest felt hollow. The next afternoon, I brought her a small wildflower I'd picked on my way to work, just a simple yellow bloom that grew in the cracks of the transport platform. Her reaction was worth every risk. Oh, Jace, she breathed, cradling the flower like it was made of spun gold. It's beautiful. On Valanus, we believe flowers carry the spirits of joy. This one, it feels like sunshine, I thought you might like it, I said. Feeling heat rise in my cheeks, the color reminded me of your laugh. She looked up at me with such intensity that I forgot how to breathe. My laugh has a color, golden, I said without thinking. Warm and bright and perfect. The silence stretched between us, charged with something new and terrifying. Nira stepped closer to the bars, close enough that I could see the flecks of silver in her storm-colored eyes. Jace, she said softly, there are things about me, about why I'm here, that you don't understand. Then tell me, I replied, matching her whisper. She glanced toward Kessa, who was pretending to sleep but obviously listening. Not here, not yet, but someday when it's safe, I will tell you everything. Are you really guilty of whatever they say you did? I asked. Her eyes flashed with something fierce. I am guilty of loving my people too much to watch them suffer. I am guilty of believing that truth matters more than politics. But what they claim I did? No. Jace, I am innocent of their accusations. Before I could respond, we heard Warden Blackstone's voice echoing down the corridor, berating some unfortunate guard. I quickly stepped back from the bars, but not before Nira caught my hand. Whatever happens, she said urgently, know that these moments with you have been the only light in this darkness. You have given me more than food, Jace. You have given me hope. Warden Blackstone appeared around the corner, his cold eyes immediately focusing on me with suspicion. He was a thin, sharp-featured man who ran the facility like his personal kingdom. Worker. Designation, he demanded. Jace Morrison, sir, food service rotation. And what exactly are you doing lingering in the high-security wing, Morrison? My mouth went dry. Just completing the meal distribution rounds, sir. Making sure all nutritional requirements are met. Blackstone's gaze flicked to Nira, who had retreated to her cot and was sitting with perfect composure, the wildflower hidden in her palm. I see, and I suppose this prisoner's nutritional requirements are of particular interest to you. The question was loaded with danger. One wrong word and I'd lose everything. All prisoners receive equal attention per facility regulations, sir. Indeed. Blackstone stepped closer, and I smelled the expensive cologne that couldn't quite mask the scent of corruption. You know, Morrison, I've been getting reports about unusual behavior in this block. Guards mentioning irregularities. My heart hammered against my ribs. I'm not sure what you mean. Sir, don't you? His smile was cold as vacuum. Well, no matter. I'm sure any irregularities will resolve themselves soon enough. Dismissed. As I walked away, I felt Blackstone's eyes boring into my back. Kessa had been right, we were playing with fire, and the flames were getting closer. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I couldn't keep putting Nira at risk with these casual visits. If I was going to help her, I needed to do more than bring sandwiches and flowers. I needed to find out the truth about why she was really here. My best friend Rico worked in the facilities records department, a mind-numbing job that involved digitizing old case files and updating prisoner databases. We'd grown up together in the same rundown neighborhood, and he was one of the few people I trusted completely. You want me to do what? Rico whispered as we sat in the break room during lunch. His dark eyes were wide with disbelief behind his thick glasses. Just look at her file, I pleaded. Something doesn't add up about her case. Jace, man. Accessing classified prisoner records could get me fired. Or worse. He glanced around nervously. Why do you even care about some alien criminal? I struggled to find words that wouldn't sound insane. She's not what they say she is, Rico. I can feel it. You can feel it. Rico's voice rose slightly. Dude, please tell me you're not falling for a prisoner. Please tell me you're not that stupid. The heat in my cheeks probably answered his question. Rico groaned and buried his face in his hands. This is insane, he muttered. But fine, I'll see what I can dig up. But if we get caught, I never met you. 2 days later, Rico slipped me a data pad during shift change, his face pale with worry. Read this tonight and delete everything, he whispered. And Jace, you're right. Something is seriously wrong with her case. That evening in my small apartment, I read Nira's file with growing anger and disbelief. According to the official records, she was charged with terrorist activities, specifically bombing a human diplomatic facility on Valanis that killed 12 people. but the evidence was circumstantial at best, relying heavily on the testimony of a single witness who claimed to have seen her near the site. What struck me most was what wasn't in the file. No mention of her family, her background, or any previous criminal activity. It was as if Nira had materialized out of nowhere just in time to commit this terrible crime. But buried in the appendix, I found something that made my blood run cold. The bombing had occurred during peace negotiations between humans and Villainous. The destroyed facility had been hosting talks about a trade agreement that would have brought prosperity to both worlds. The next afternoon, I brought Nira the information, my hands shaking as I passed the data pad through the bars. "You shouldn't have done this," she said after reading, but her voice was filled with gratitude rather than anger. "It's too dangerous. Tell me the truth," I said. "All of it." Nira glanced at Kessa, who was openly listening now. The Crotonian nodded slightly, some silent communication passing between them. "My father is Ambassador Zephyr," Nira began quietly. "He was leading the peace negotiations when the bombing happened. I was there as his cultural advisor, helping both sides understand each other's customs. Then why? Because someone wanted those talks to fail." She interrupted. "Someone who benefits from keeping our worlds apart, from maintaining the fear and mistrust between our species. Who? I don't know for certain, but I have suspicions." Her eyes hardened. "The witness who identified me. He was a minor Aiden, the human delegation, someone who would never have access to high-level meetings unless someone gave it to him." Kessa spoke up for the first time in days. She's been trying to prove her innocence from the inside, gathering information about who really orchestrated the bombing. That's why she's been so quiet, so compliant. She's been listening. "The guards talk more freely round prisoners they consider broken," Nira explained. "And I've learned things. Conversations about payments, about schedules that coincided with the bombing, about people who suddenly came into money after the negotiations failed. Blackstone," I said suddenly, remembering his expensive cologne and calculating eyes. "Possibly, or someone above him." Nira reached through the bars and took my hand. "Jace, what I'm about to ask you, it's not fair, and it's dangerous. Ask me anyway. I need to get a message to my father. He thinks I'm dead. That was part of the cover-up. If he knew I was alive, that I had information about the real bombers, he'd come for you." I finished, "With everything he has." Her grip on my hand tightened. "But sending that message means breaking communication protocols, accessing systems you're not authorized to use. It means risking everything." I thought about my quiet life, my safe routine, my small apartment with its faded photographs and recipe books. Then I looked at Nira, really looked at her, and saw not just the woman I was falling in love with, but someone fighting for justice, for truth, for the hope of peace between our worlds. "What do you need me to do?" Relief flooded her features. "The communication array in the administration building. During the night shift change, there's a 10-minute window when the security rotation leaves it unmonitored." "That's tomorrow night," I said, my stomach clenching with fear and determination. "Jace." Nira's voice was soft, vulnerable. "If this goes wrong, if we're caught, they'll separate us. They might transfer me to a maximum security facility. Or, worse, then we better not get caught." She pulled my hand to her lips and kissed my knuckles gently, the touch sending electricity through my entire body. "I have never met anyone like you, Jace Morrison. In all the worlds I've seen, among all the people I've known, there is no one who has your courage, your kindness." "I'm not brave," I protested. "I'm terrified. That's what makes you brave." Her storm-colored eyes held mine. "Tomorrow night, we change everything." As I walked home that evening, I realized I was no longer just helping a prisoner I cared about. I was joining a fight for justice that was bigger than both of us. And whatever happened tomorrow, whatever the consequences, I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be, even if it scared me to death. The communication array was housed in a sterile white room filled with blinking consoles and the quiet hum of quantum processors. I'd never been in the administration building after hours, and every shadow seemed to hide potential discovery. My hands shook as I input the coordinates Nira had given me for her father's secure channel. The message was brief but devastating. "Nira alive. Meridian Detention Center. Framed. Have proof. Come quickly. A friend. The transmission light blinked green, then went dark. It was done. I was halfway back to the service corridors when the alarms started blaring. Red emergency lights bathed everything in crimson as automated voices announced a facility-wide lockdown. My blood turned to ice somehow. They'd traced the transmission back to me already. I ran toward the detention blocks, knowing it was probably suicide, but unable to abandon Nira. If they were coming for me, they'd come for her too. Whatever plan we had was falling apart, but maybe I could still get her out. The corridors were chaos. Guards rushed past me without a second glance, focused on securing the perimeter. I reached cell block 7 just as Captain Steele, the facility's head of security, appeared with a squad of armed guards. Stand aside, Morrison, Steele barked. He was a compact, dangerous man with cybernetic implants that glowed blue in the emergency lighting. You're under arrest for unauthorized use of communication systems and conspiracy. Jace. Nira's voice cut through the noise. She was pressed against the bars of her cell, her eyes wide with fear not for herself, but for me. Let her go, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. She's innocent. Steele laughed harshly. Innocent? Your little girlfriend is a terrorist, Morrison. And now you're one too. The only terrorists here are the ones who framed her to stop the peace talks. I shot back. Something flickered across Steele's face, surprise, or maybe recognition. But before he could respond, Kess's gravelly voice echoed from within the cell. Steele, good to see you again. You double-crossing piece of— Shut up, Steele snapped. But the damage was done. The brief exchange told me everything I needed to know. You know each other, I said. You're part of this. The bombing, the frame-up, you're all part of it. Steele's hand moved to his weapon. Take him down. That's when the wall exploded. The blast knocked everyone to the ground as chunks of reinforced concrete rained down. Through the smoke and debris, figures in sleek environmental suits appeared like ghosts. They moved with fluid precision, their weapons humming with energy I'd never seen before. Nira Zephyr, one of them called in a voice that carried absolute authority. Your father sent us. Here, Nira shouted back, the lead figure tall, elegant, with the same blue-silver skin as Nira approached her cell, with a device that looked like crystallized light. He cut through the energy bars as if they were paper. Ambassador Zephyr? I gasped, recognizing him from the description Nira had given me. You must be Jace, he said, his voice carrying the same musical quality as his. My daughter spoke of you in her message. I sent that message, I said, struggling to my feet as Steele's guards regrouped, and saved her life by doing so. Ambassador Zephyr's eyes the same storm color as Nira's held mine with intensity. For that, you have my eternal gratitude. Touching. Reunion, Steele snarled, raising his weapon. But you're all under arrest for— He never finished the sentence. One of the Villani rescue team moved faster than my eyes could track, and suddenly Steele was unconscious on the floor. Father. Nira rushed into Ambassador Zephyr's arms, and for a moment they held each other as if trying to bridge the weeks of separation and fear. We must go, another Villani said urgently. Facility reinforcements are approaching. Jace comes with us, Nira said firmly, pulling away from her father to take my hand. Daughter, he is human. The complications. He saved my life. More than that, he believed in me when no one else would. Nira's voice carried an authority that matched her father's. If you leave him here, they'll make him disappear to cover up their conspiracy. I won't abandon him. Ambassador Zephyr studied me for a long moment. You would leave your world for my daughter. The question hit me like a physical blow. Leave Earth, leave everything I'd ever known. But looking at Nira, seeing the hope and fear warring in her eyes, the answer came without hesitation. Yes, I said simply, even not knowing if you'll ever be able to return. Yes. A small smile crossed the ambassador's face. Then you are worthy of her faith in you. But Kessa grabbed my arm as we headed toward the breach in the wall. Wait, human. There's something you need to know. Kessa, there's no time, Nira started. Make time. The Crotonian said firmly. The evidence about the bombing, I know where it is. Blackstone keeps backup files of all his dirty deals in a hidden drive in his office. Everything about who really orchestrated the attack, who paid for it, all of it. Why are you telling us this? I asked. Kessa's scarred face twisted into something that might have been a smile. Because I like you, kid. And because I hate being used. Blackstone promised me early release if I kept an eye on the princess here. Turns out he was never planning to honor that deal. The office is 2 floors up, I said. Looking at Ambassador Zephyr, if we can get that evidence, we can expose the real conspiracy. He finished. Clear my daughter's name completely, not just extract her. It's too dangerous. One of the rescue team protested. We should extract now while we can. No, Nira said firmly. Jace is right. If we run now, they'll just frame someone else, start another war. We end this here. The next few minutes were a blur of running through corridors, avoiding security patrols, and watching the Villani team work with precision that seemed almost like magic. When we reached Blackstone's office, Ambassador Zephyr made short work of the electronic locks. The hidden drive was exactly where Kessa had said it would be. As the data transferred to Ambassador Zephyr's device, I watched years of corruption and conspiracy download in neat, damning files. Got it, the ambassador said grimly. More than enough to expose everyone involved. We were almost back to the extraction point when Captain Steele appeared with a full security squad. Blocking our path. You're not leaving with that data, he said, his weapon trained on Ambassador Zephyr. Actually, came a new voice from behind us. I think they are. Luna, a maintenance worker I barely knew, stepped out of the shadows with what looked like half the facility's technical staff. They were all armed, all determined, and all very clearly on our side. Turns out, Luna said with a grim smile, a lot of us have been wondering why this place always seems to detain the wrong people. Thanks for giving us a reason to do something about it. The standoff lasted only seconds before Steele's squad found themselves overwhelmingly outnumbered. The captain himself looked around desperately, his authority crumbling as his own people began lowering their weapons. This is over, Steele. Ambassador Zephyr said quietly, surrender, and you might live to see trial. But instead of surrendering, Steele raised his weapon toward Nira. I moved without thinking, throwing myself between them just as the energy blast fired. The world went white, then black. I woke up in a medical bay that looked like something out of a dream. The walls curved organically, glowing with soft bioluminescent patterns that shifted gently like breathing. The air smelled of flowers and rain, and I felt better than I had in months despite the bandages wrapped around my chest. You're awake, Nira said softly from beside my bed. She looked different, healthier, more vibrant, wearing flowing robes that shimmered like starlight. But her eyes held the same warmth that had captured my heart in that cold detention cell. Did we? I started to ask. We did. She took my hand, and I felt that same electric connection that had sparked between us from the beginning. The data was transmitted to both human and Villani authorities. The conspiracy has been exposed, all the way up to Warden Blackstone and 3 high-ranking officials in both governments. Steele, in custody, along with everyone else involved. Father made sure the evidence was undeniable. She squeezed my hand gently. You've been unconscious for 6 days, Jace. The energy blast. If you hadn't been wearing that maintenance uniform with its energy dispersal threads, you would have died. I struggled to sit up, wincing at the pull of healing tissue. Where are we? My family's estate on Valanis. Nira's voice carried a note of wonder. You're the first human to ever see our world, Jace. The first to be welcomed into our home. Through the curved window, I could see exactly what she'd described in those whispered conversations. Trees with silver leaves that caught the light of 3 moons. Gardens where flowers seemed to glow with their own inner radiance. And in the distance, an ocean that reflected the stars like liquid midnight. It's beautiful, I breathed. Not as beautiful as what you did, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You saved my life. Risked everything for someone you barely knew. My people have never seen such courage from a human. I couldn't let him hurt you. I know. She leaned forward and kissed me gently. A touch that felt like coming home and starting an adventure all at the same time. That's why my father has made an unprecedented decision. As if summoned by her words, Ambassador Zephyr entered the medical bay. followed by an elderly Villani with kind eyes and ceremonial robes that seemed to be made of captured starlight. Jace Morrison. Ambassador Zephyr said formally, but with genuine warmth, "Allow me to present Elder Thane, the highest authority of our world's council." The elderly Villani stepped forward and placed a gentle hand on my forehead. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. "Young human, your actions have prevented a war between our peoples. The conspiracy you helped expose would have destroyed the peace my granddaughter and her father worked so hard to build." He paused, studying my face with ancient, knowing eyes. "But more than that, you have shown us that love can bridge any gap, overcome any difference." "I don't understand," I said. "The evidence you recovered has been presented to both our governments." Ambassador Zephyr explained. "President Morgan of Earth and our High Council have not only pardoned you and my daughter, but used your story as the foundation for a new peace treaty. You've become a symbol, Jace, proof that our species can not only coexist, but care for each other." Elder Thane smiled. "Which brings us to an unusual situation. My great-granddaughter wishes to bond with you in the manner of our people. But you are human, from another world, with your own life and traditions." I looked at Nira, seeing hope and fear warring in her storm-colored eyes. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means," she said softly, "that I'm asking you to stay, to make Villanis your home, to learn our ways as I learn yours, to build something new together not just for us, but as an example of what our peoples can become. But it also means," Ambassador Zephyr added, "that you would be giving up Earth permanently. Our bonding ceremonies create a spiritual connection that requires presence on Villanis. You would be honored here, given a position in our government, as a cultural liaison, but you could never go home. The choice hung in the air between us. Everything I'd ever known was on Earth: my job, my apartment, my memories of grandmother. But everything I wanted was sitting beside me, offering me a future I'd never dared to dream." "There's something else," Nira said quietly. "The sandwich you shared with me that first day. The kindness you showed a starving prisoner. It's become part of our cultural exchange program. Human and Villani children on both worlds now learn about the power of simple generosity, of seeing past fear to find compassion. Your grandmother's recipe," Elder Thane added with a twinkle in his ancient eyes, "has become quite popular in our cultural centers. We've even adapted it using Villani ingredients." I thought about grandmother then, about her belief that food was love made edible. She'd spent her life showing me that the smallest acts of kindness could change everything. Looking at Nira, at the family that had welcomed me, at the beautiful world outside the window, I realized she'd been right in ways I was only now beginning to understand. "There's no choice to make," I said, taking Nira's hand in both of mine. "My home isn't a place, it's wherever you are." The bonding ceremony took place 3 days later, under the light of all 3 moons. Representatives from Earth, including President Morgan herself, attended via holographic link to witness what the media was calling the wedding. That saved 2 worlds. But for me, surrounded by silver trees and flowers that sang in the evening breeze, holding hands with the woman who had stolen my heart with storm-colored eyes and musical laughter, it was simply the beginning of our story. As Nira and I exchanged vows in both languages, promising to bridge our worlds with love, I thought about that moment in the detention center when I'd offered my sandwich to a hungry stranger. I'd thought I was just being kind. I'd had no idea I was changing the galaxy. During the reception, as humans and Villani celebrated together under an alien sky, Luna approached me with a grin. "So," she said, raising a glass of something that sparkled like liquid starlight, "turns out sharing your lunch was the best diplomatic move in human history." "Something like that," I laughed, pulling Nira closer as she joined our conversation. "Have I mentioned," Nira said, her eyes sparkling with mischief, "that my grandmother's recipes are quite good too? I think you'll enjoy learning Villani cooking." As we danced later that night, moving to music that blended human melodies with Villani harmonics, I realized that every choice, from the sandwich to the data theft, to throwing myself in front of that energy blast, had led us here, to this moment, this woman, this impossible love that had rewritten the rules of 2 civilizations. "No regrets," Nira whispered as we swayed under the 3 moons. Only one, I said, making her eyebrow raise in concern. I wish I'd brought you a better sandwich that first day. Her laughter rang out like silver bells. And somewhere in the distance, the flowers seemed to sing along. I was home,